Greetings and a warm welcome. How are we all feeling at the moment? Today we're working through rigid mindsets. And if I had to ask you, are you a rigid thinker? And you answer me no. Well, isn't that some rigid thinking within yourself? Because most of the time we are rigid thinkers. Because we think the way we perceive things is actually the way things are. And a lot of the time we are so set in our ways that we don't even consider a different perspective. We don't even consider a different way of doing things. And because you get used to your way of doing things and you reap success from the way you do things. But it's important to keep an open mind because we need to learn from each other. We need to grow. And if you have a rigid mindset, it makes it extremely difficult to communicate. It makes it difficult for you to relate to other people. And it sort of just keeps you in this box that there's no other way. And rigid thinking can be bad for multiple reasons, but at the end of the day, it actually just holds you back. Because the more open-minded we are, the more experience we gain, the more we understand not only life, other people, but ourselves as well. And a rigid mindset is only going to take you so far. Because what if you need to interact with other people? What if you need to do team building? And your way is the only way. And as we grow older, as we mature, we become more and more set in our ways. Which is understandable because we have found what works for us. But we need to grow, we need to expand. And rigid thinking has to do with the cognitive part of you that believes what you think. If you think that you are useless, then you're going to act like you're useless. Because that thinking is going to produce results. It's going to manifest things. And if you're so rigid in your thinking, then you might find it difficult to emotionally regulate. And you might find it difficult to change your thought patterns and your thought processes. And rigid thinking is one of the reasons we fall back. It's one of the reasons why we struggle to heal. It's because we think and believe these destructive things about ourselves. And this rigid thinking is destructive. And rigid thinking is also a barrier to learning, because if you think you know all you need to know, then you're not going to expand. Then you're not going to learn. You're not going to grow. You're not going to develop. A barrier to learning is what keeps you stagnant, complacent, stuck. And rigid mindsets means that you don't accept different perspectives. You don't accept other opinions. And you don't learn from other people. You don't learn from your experiences because everything is set in a specific way all of the time. And rigid thinking, as I mentioned earlier, causes a massive barrier to connecting. When someone is telling you their story and they say something in their story that doesn't resonate with you and you think that it's bad, you're going to judge them before they even finish their story. And you won't connect with other people because the thing is, when you're a rigid thinker, you tend to be a bit more judgmental, a bit more assumptuous, and you tend to mind read. And people don't like that. People like to connect with people who are open and understanding and compassionate. So it can be a really lonely life, rigid thinking. And rigid thinking gives us this fake idea of perfection, that things are the way they are and they're perfect the way they are and nothing needs to change. And this fake idea of perfection is what's going to lower your ability to understand that you can learn and that you make mistakes and that you need to grow from the lessons that you learn in life. And this fake idea of perfection can cause you to become very pedantic, a real perfectionist. Everything has to be this way all of the time. And you're going to cause yourself so much distress, so much anxiety. Because if things don't work out the way you anticipated, then you're going to feel your emotions are going to be all over the place. You're either going to be very disappointed, very unhappy, very confused, because this fake idea of perfection is what's going to keep you stuck in that old mindset. And we need to adopt new mindsets as we grow and develop and enter different stages in life, so we can make positive meaning and create learnings. And another thing about rigid thinking is that it causes rigid boundaries. Now, don't get me wrong. Boundaries are awesome. Boundaries are necessary. But you get two extremes. Very porous boundaries, which means you can be influenced easily. You let people cross your boundaries easily. And then you have rigid boundaries, where you are so set in your ways that if someone brings up something that you can do that's a bit out of your comfort zone, then it's a no, 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 no. And oftentimes it's a no towards things that can benefit you. And those boundaries, again, make it very difficult to connect with other people. Because if one of your friends say, oh, let's go rock climbing this weekend, but you're so afraid of heights that you say, no, I can't. Instead of challenging that rigid thinking, instead of challenging those mindsets, is what's going to keep you stuck there if you don't challenge it, if you don't test the waters and step out of your comfort zone. And of course, I mean it in a healthy and constructive way, always. But rigid thinking also creates issues with empathy. You might find it difficult to empathize with other people because you are so set in your own experience that you may not be able to understand someone else's experience. You might not be able to relate to it, and you can't offer empathy and support, which makes it even more difficult to connect. And this issue with empathy also means that we don't see from other perspectives. We adopt one perspective, that is right, that is true, that is perfect. But what about the other side of the coin? What about the other person's story? And that's why we mustn't be so quick to believe every rigid thought that comes into our minds. And rigid thinking can also cause controlling behavior because things need to be a certain way. Outcomes must be a certain way. And I must be a certain way. And you must be a certain way. And if you don't get that level of perfection, you look for a way to achieve it by force. And that's where you become very controlling. And as I said, rigid mindsets cause us to become stagnant. We're not venturing out. We're not experiencing. We're not seeking to understand. We're not seeking to listen. We're not seeking to observe. We're just in our own little realities. And you know what? Over time, that gets smaller and smaller if you don't expand and learn. And Rigid mindsets can also make growth and healing very difficult, because a lot of people with rigid mindsets either believe that they are not worthy of healing, or they don't believe in healing itself, or they just believe that they cannot be healed because they are damaged and they are broken. And that is not true. Healing and growing is difficult when you do not have a growth-focused mindset. Remember that rigid mindsets don't serve you in any way, and they can really, really hold you back in life from doing the things and experiencing life as it is. How do you relate? So remember, you are unique and valuable. Take care of that stunning person. Stay strong wherever you're from. You are worthy.